welcome back to the Celtics Nation Rise account. I'm Griffin Aldrich. Alongside me is Seamus Zarlingo. And some kind of breaking news. Uh, Brad Stevens just had his press conference, and I think it's safe to say, Seamus, before we really dive into it, that it was very dry. I think and it was and I'm quoting Andrew take. So yes, Andrew Quinn said this. He said, "I don't think it was Brad's fault. He thinks it's the reporter's fault because some of the questions they had were very y- vague, kind of, and you look through it too. And I feel like a lot of the questions, like they would say it, and this is kind of where we had what I can't think of his name. One of the reporters on too over here. But he was also saying too, you have to like give bigger answers, you can't be so vague with it. And you saw like there was one reporter that like was like, well, and just kept going with it. So Brad's kind of he wasn't giving a lot of answers. And I'm this is just I'll say this. He wasn't giving a lot of answers at first. And you have to look at it from this standpoint too. He said he after the draft or like around the draft when he talks to more people, that's when more talk is going to come out. But right now, he was very dry. But Seamus, initial thoughts from the interview, not interview, press conference, and then
Well,
we'll get into some talk about it.
it's basically an interview with
Yeah,
Brad Stevens and the
pretty much.
entire Celtics media cohort. And this, just to make it clear, this was the 2024-25 end of season press conference from Brad Stevens. So everybody has their end of season exit press conferences, interviews, and this was the Brad Stevens version of that. So Brad Stevens talking to the media today for the first time since the Celtics were eliminated in Game 6 of the 2025 Eastern Conference semifinals at Madison Square Garden against the Knicks. And Brad Stevens, obviously, very what do you call Brad Stevens? He is somebody who is very down to earth. He is somebody who
Yes.
is very pragmatic, practical, and just very understanding of every situation that goes on out there. I think Brad Stevens, he is just extremely good at his job. All right, but whatever job you're going to put Brad Stevens into, whether it's head coach of an NBA team, head coach of a college basketball team, GM of an NBA team, or even the GM putting him out there in front of reporters, Brad Stevens is always going to be great at his job because Brad Stevens today, the role of the GM, right? I think one thing that people forget is the role of the GM slash president of basketball operations. I mean, Danny Ainge was the GM, Brad was the president of basketball operations. It's basically the same position. It's just the title. It's basically the same thing. Doing the same job within an organization. But people forget that job. It's about making the owner and the stakeholders happy, right? And it's about really keeping things in house and doing things at the I don't want to say always at the demand of the ownership, but the ownership always has a lot to do with every single transaction made. And I thought today, Brad, he came out very corporate. He deflected a lot of questions. There was a lot of vague, conceptual, and undefined statements by Brad, and that's what made me write down. Brad is just going to be a good worker at whatever position you put him in. He's going to be a good worker at fulfilling whatever role is asked of him and tasked of him at a specific job, a position anywhere. Like Brad Stevens, if you put him in McDonald's right now, I mean, he's ascending up to manager right away because
Oh yeah.
he's going to know how to flip those fries. Like that's just, I think Brad Stevens is just somebody who is going to work everywhere. And that, like today, I just want to highlight that is the way he was at this press conference. This is not how he spoke as a head coach. Today's press conference, as a head coach, Brad Stevens, again, very down to earth personality, but always was very honest, right? About everything, very honest about the team, where they were at, where he was at. And he was always somebody with humility as well. As the GM, as the president of basketball operations, I mean, he is just about hiding the operations of the Celtics. That is what these press conferences are about. There's not a ton of moments where you could say, yes, he's being truthful, but he's kind of hiding things, right? Like not saying things in a defined manner, not saying things
Converse.
as go ahead, Griffin. I mean, I was going to say, just in terms of this press conference, again, a lot of deflected questions, a lot of vague, conceptual, undefined statements from Brad Stevens, and it's just about keeping things in the background, right? Not really revealing the thoughts, feelings, and opinions of everybody behind the scenes. Maybe doing that to a little degree, but not doing that to such a large, massive degree to where the media can get hold of things and talk about things. It was just about being the most boring person in the room possible. Brad Stevens achieved that today at his press conference, and it just makes me think he would be good at any position, because this is not how Brad was as a head coach talking to the press conference, and now as a GM. I mean, he's very corporate, very hiding things that are going on in the background, hiding the opinions and feelings of everybody in the background, and just again deflecting a lot of questions today. And that I'll say this: I'm not faulting Brad Stevens for that. I'm not mad at him for that. I'm actually happy because I want to see this happen. Competent organizations, this is what they do. They don't go out to the media blabbering
Mm.
on about everybody. I mean, that's something that came out about the Dallas Mavericks after the Luka Doncic traders. It just felt like after the Luca trade, I mean, they were still very good and leaving some of their statements vague, but you could tell, oh, evidence shots at Luca, evidence shots at the entire
But
situation which was going on with the Mavericks, and they were just kind of blabbering on about the situation, letting us know what was going on inside the halls of the Dallas Mavericks organization, and that's not what I want to see out of the Celtics. All right, I'm happy today that Brad Stevens was very vague at his press conference, but I just wanted to point that out off the bat here. There's a lot more points to get in to here, but just the entire press conference alone, like not too much information given out. Maybe a couple new tidbits we'll get into here, but not too many crazy statements from Brad. Not too many statements we can come on here and dissect to the greatest of extent, like some other media outlets and organizations tend to try to do. We're not totally like that at Celtics Talk Weekly. We're not trying to grasp onto everything. We're trying to grasp onto real stories. But there simply weren't any real stories out of this press conference from Brad Stevens today. And I'm sorry, Griffin. I know. Go ahead. I mean,
yeah,
I totally ran you over there, but sorry, Griff. Go ahead.
no, you're all good. Sorry for interrupting. But I have to say too, um, you are completely right there. He did a very great job, and you see it with other organizations. And I feel like another one, and I talk about this a lot, the Boston Red Sox. They're very good and at kind of steering away from those questions, especially Craig Breslow, who is their GM for the Boston Red Sox. So if you want to see anyone do it, look at him. But Brad Stevens did that perfectly, and I think you guys want to hear the meaty, juicy talk. So let's hit a bold take. I This is a quote from Brad Stevens, and he said this: "The North Stars." Sorry, I completely didn't write this correctly. To having a championship contender. So basically, what this means is I like this quote that Brad Stevens said. Sorry, stars. That's why you always check. Check your grammar. That's my bad.
Well, no,
That's
you got no. It was the spacing. If you pull that, I don't know if you want to pull it back up or not, but
yeah.
it's like the North Star is to have a
Oh,
championship
yep,
contender.
yep,
So
yep, yep.
just
I
the
didn't
space
even
in there,
Yeah, so I didn't even realize
right?
that.
So
So,
there you go.
a lot of space is yep. So, basically, I love this take from him is because, it's tough to say a lot about the Boston Celtics in this, but I think one thing that we could take away from this is that Brad Stevens, no matter what situation we're in, because Seamus, and I think you and I can say this perfectly, is next year is going to be a bridge year for the Boston Celtics, correct? You technically going to be a bridge year. But saying the championship window still has time and he could build a championship team is kind of what I took away is that he's still gonna be there. You have to throw in stuff because, like you said, he was very vague. He didn't he was doing his job perfectly. And I love your quote that you said that he's over there. He could be flipping patties and he'll be up in the management because it's true. He did a very good job, and he said again, I'm gonna throw this up. Yeah, I know I'm throwing my two quotes up so early, but even talking about the draft. Like he was talking about the draft earlier, but then later, I love this one. As far as us and moving up in those levels in the draft, that's I would guess is probably not on the table. So we'll get into this on episode 41, but this is talking about Cooper Flag and their talk. We're not going to talk about Cooper Flag, but I think this is the one thing that Brad Stevens did say that kind of was the only thing that, all right, we're going to be aggressive in this aspect. We're not going to be aggressive in this aspect. but we'll get into that in episode 41 about Cooper Flag. But I think that's the only thing you could pinpoint kind of what he said. But he did say there will be fireworks, trading draft picks and stuff in the NBA as a whole, I think. But any juicy, fiery topics that you've written down that you could we kind of get a little bit off of, Seamus?
Okay, so I think these press conferences can sometimes be revealing in certain ways, but you really got to read in between the lines and kind of speculate a little bit and also just really pay attention because they are seriously, I mean, they'll say something very tiny, but it'll be in the midst of all of this fluff around the one tiny statement where you're going, oh, wait, there was a little something right there. But this is one quote that I took from earlier that I just think represents, I talked about it's about making the owner happy, it's about making the stakeholders happy, it's about really letting, as the GM and president of basketball operations, not many GMs and presidents have the ability to just freely reign and do whatever they want. They have to consult their owner first, the governor of the team first. And this was a quote earlier that from Brad Stevens that kind of embodies that a little bit. I know, so this from Brad Stevens. I know there will be a lot of questions about what's next. I'll probably talk more about that at the draft time. A theme of today's press conference, by the way, this is me talking right now. A theme of today's press conference, all the offseason stuff. Brad Stevens was going, nope, don't ask me about that. Ask me at draft time. Ask me at the draft. Ask me after the draft. You can ask me about the offseason then. Today, I'm only answering questions about this past season. But back to Brad here. When we have a better idea after meeting with, okay, I'll just read this. I know there will be a lot of questions about what's next. I'll probably talk about that at the draft time. When we have a better idea after meeting with all the key stakeholders and everybody else about what the next steps might be. At the end of the day, I think that will all be driven by the same thing that's always driven us. And that is how do we get into the mix to compete for championships best. So a little fluff there at the end, giving out the how do we compete for championships best, blah. We know that's the goal. We understand when they give it out a million times. We love that they talk about that because that is great to hear from a fan base perspective and people who cover the teams like, okay, yes, they're trying to win championships, although that is the obvious point here. But I think the key phrase in here, and it's what I said after the draft time. He said about the offseason, he's not talking about the offseason until the draft. When we have a better idea after meeting with all the key stakeholders and everybody else
Seamus,
about what the next steps might be. To me, that is pointing towards Brad and the front office. They have no idea what they're going to do right now. They have absolutely no idea. And that's not to the fault of themselves. That's not saying, oh, it's a bad job. They don't have a roadmap out here. It's not saying, oh, they're late. Oh, they don't know what they're doing. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the owners, the people who just bought the team, when you're saying key stakeholders, the people who just bought the team, he has to meet with those people, the key stakeholders of the Boston Celtics, the owners of the Celtics, to decide what the direction of this team is going to be, what the payment is going to look like. Because I'm sure Brad Stevens goes to the ownership this summer and goes, hey, maybe we pay the luxury tax again next year. Maybe they go, yeah, sure, just spend. Brad Stevens then has the ability to keep everybody and do whatever he wants. But looking at that scenario, I think we all think that's probably not what's going to happen going into next season with an astronomical luxury tax bill facing the Celtics front and center with Jason Tatum down and not likely not playing the entirety of next season with the torn Achilles. Considering those factors, what's likely going to happen is Brad's going to meet with the key stakeholders and the ownership, and that meeting is going to be about who's going to be traded away, what kind of transactions are going to be made, and what direction this team is going to try to go in. And right now, Brad Stevens, he couldn't give us much of that at the press conference, not only because he didn't want to, but because the team literally needs to meet in order to establish a direction. And when I say meet and I say team, that's about like Brad Stevens. He does not have free reign in these situations. We give him so much credit for the transactional part of the job of the GM and the president of basketball operations. But the fact of the matter is, now, for one, yes, it's skillful that Brad is able to pull off the moves in which he's able to make. However, at the same time, it has to be approved by ownership. Those kind of moves and those kind of transactions have to be approved by ownership Now, not in a written agreement, but at the same, like, that's just kind of how it rolls. If you're owning a basketball team, you want to know what's going on with the operations. But also, furthermore, uh, you have to establish a direction of what kind of money you're actually getting from ownership over the offseason or in any scenario, because if the ownership isn't willing to pay the luxury tax and doesn't want to, well, the president of basketball operations and general manager, if the owner is going, nope, we can't pay this bill. We're not going to pay this bill out of our pockets. You need to sell off these players or you need to make these transactions. This is what needs to happen. And then Brad goes and defies that and adds money to the books. Well, guess what's happening to Brad? He's getting fired. And so that's how these jobs work. I mean, Brad, regardless of all the free reign we think he has and all the skill we believe he has as a GM, president of basketball operations, head coach. I mean, he very much he needs his moves and all these transactions approved by ownership. Otherwise, I mean, we talk about, for the free reign we think that he has a boss. He has a boss who is handing out the checks to the organization and handing out the checks for the team. And under those circumstances, the boss, right, the ownership, the key stakeholders of the Celtics, they're going to make the decisions on what happens this offseason. And Brad Stevens is simply going to follow along and fall in line with, okay, if they don't want to pay the luxury tax, well, then we're going to move on from Giroux and Kristaps. And maybe there's a world in which randomly the ownership goes, we're tech billionaires. Sure, we'll pay whatever luxury tax every year. We'll be like Steve Ballmer. We'll just pay it whatever year. There's a scenario out there where the ownership just goes, sure, fine, pay an astronomical luxury tax bill for the team, and then Holiday and Porzingis are all of a sudden around next season, and the whole roster is somewhat the same. So I think that meeting is going to be important later on in time with the key stakeholders, as Brad Stevens said, and the ownership. But I just wanted to point that out. That quote, I think that's one of the I mean, there's more juicy stuff I have down here, not juicy, not crazy, just more tidbits. But I think that was kind of one of those quotes that surrounded by fluff, people don't really think much of it, but does give an insight on, okay, it's going to be the new owners deciding what to do and what are the next steps. And Brad doesn't even know at this point in time, and he's going to go along with what those next steps and what that direction is. And at this point, it is still very undefined. I think that's important to say.
And I gotta say this, from my perspective too, and you already kind of mentioned it a little bit. I like how he's not counting out with the Celtics and their championships, like their championship window. And I love that because obviously you can't straight up say that to the media that, all right, we're not planning on being aggressive. And because we know there's probably going to be a bridge year. Um, but I look at this and I'm like, okay, well, he didn't clearly say we're going to go into a rebuild because he can't yet. He can't say that. But I like how he is still going with Celtics history, Celtics pride, Celtics nation. I mean, the expectation in Boston for the Celtics, particularly, is championships. I mean, they're your goal here in Boston is to go for banners and get rings. I mean, that's the expectation from the fan base. That's the expectation from a organization wise, and that's what everyone wants. So I like how he incorporated that and like let there be window. Obviously, you said with new ownership, we have no clue what's at stake with the new ownership. We have no clue, but I assume Bill Chisholm, our new owner, from a Boston native is a Celtics fan. He is. You see that clearly as he was even wearing a Tatum jersey. I think we got to pull it up next podcast or something. But he clearly is a Celtics fan and he wants to be involved in this. So I think you're still going to see that championship window being extended. So I do like what Brad said. But Seamus, you want to get into the rest of the juicy stuff and we'll touch upon
I
that.
was gonna
But
I was gonna see if we got that picture of Bill Chisholm in a Celtics jersey.
I
Let's see.
while we're looking, I think we need to pull up this one. We did it once, but I don't think we had enough time to really appreciate what this jersey is and how cool this is. I love the Torrey Craig Luke Cornett jersey. I love that. So we gotta appreciate that as well. While Seamus is looking for that, but I'm saying like actually, while you're looking for that, I'll give a little story really quick. For everyone out there who knows, I go to a lot of Maine Celtics games. Okay, so right here is obviously at the playoff game. Brad Stevens was there. That's my second time meeting Brad Stevens. My brother and I actually got a picture with him when they went to the finals last year. But again, like you said, super chill guy. Honestly, he really gives off like dad vibes. Like you could tell he's a like no, I'm just like you could
Objectively,
really
just
tell
that's how
that
it is.
yeah, he really is a guy who's very down to earth, as Seamus said, and honestly is good with people and understands his job at hand. Like whatever job Brad Stevens is doing, he's gonna be good at it, as Seamus already mentioned. But I'll come back and give some more juicy topics because that's what you guys are here for. I do like his response to the Knicks. It killed him that he had to mention on it, and he was like, "I would rather have you guys talk about." That's something I like. Rather have you guys talk about all of that other stuff that I'm not even supposed to talk about till after. But I love how he was like, "No, but it sucked," because he knows from other Celtics fans' perspective too that that was a crappy series and it sucks. And he gave a little thing on Tatum. Obviously, we know that Tatum was helped out with Brad Stevens, but I think Seamus got it right. You want me to
I
pull it
did.
up? I'll pull it up.
Go ahead.
Look at this. We have Bill Chisholm there, Celtics owner, wearing a Tatum jersey. So I think it's safe to say that Tatum is safe in this franchise, for one. For two, you that shows his heart and dedication. If you look there, you see that number 0, that's Bill Chisholm right there. Um,
He looks like a normal fan right here. I mean,
he
just
really does. So
completely normal fan. Also, hat tip to Daniel Donabedian on this one. He took this photo. Just got to give photo credits here. This is Daniel Donabedian, who was near the court, and this was during the NBA playoffs, if I'm not mistaken. And there's Bill Chisholm with a Jason Tatum jersey, looking like a normal fan.
I
That's what he looks
know.
like here. And that
Looks
is,
like
yes, confirmed Bill Chisholm. I know we can't see his face, but
but
that is
yeah,
Bill Chisholm.
if you
That is
guys were
what he
watching
looks like.
if you guys were watching the game too, you could totally see him. So they showed him. But what are the rest of the juicy quotes you have? And everyone, go check out episode 41. We're going to be posting doing that on Wednesday. We're going to dive deep into the whole Cooper Flag situation with the Celtics and hear more points on this whole thing with Brad Stevens. So tune in on Wednesday for episode 41 and also go check out episode 40 with our little season recap. But hit us with it, Seamus.
What's hilarious is we filmed a Jason Tatum torn Achilles live on Celtics Talk Weekly last week, and part of that conversation was about Joe Mazzulla, the Celtics potentially moving on from Joe. And from this Brad Stevens press conference, I highly doubt that's going to happen because what he said in this press conference, he said Joe was great. Joe's done a great job. And he ended his little spiel about Joe earlier with the fact the Celtics organization is lucky and thankful for Joe and the coaching staff. And he talked a lot about Mike Malone and Taylor Jenkins being let go and how that's a part of the job and part of the process of the job, and good head coaches get let go all the time. But just in terms of talking about Joe Mazzulla, the way Brad Stevens was putting himself behind Joe earlier and the way he was talking about Joe Mazzulla suggests to me Joe Mazzulla is here to stay. He's not going anywhere. Plus, I think if they would have let go of Joe Mazzulla, they would have probably already done it.
Yeah, I no,
Maybe coming off the playoff run, it's possible they could wait a little bit, but I just don't see that much of a reason if that is going to be decided or not. But the way Brad was saying that the Celtics were thankful for Joe and the staff, he was doing a great job. He's been great. I feel as if, and this was in relevance to the fired head coaches out there, Mike Malone and Taylor Jenkins. He was basically saying, I mean, Brad Stevens was basically saying, I mean, he said outright there, the organization and himself, they're lucky and thankful to have Joe Mazzulla. So I think just from that, he was that was the one thing that I felt like throughout the whole press conference, like he was very firm on, right? He's very firm on Joe Mazzulla. So I believe he'll be around next season. Joe Mazzulla will be around next season and beyond. Who knows what kind of beyond, but certainly next season Joe Mazzulla will be around, and that was something in Brad Stevens's presser that I thought came out for sure today. Although it again was probably not something too uh, headline shattering to anybody, and it probably wasn't noted by too many out there. But this was mainly a press conference where Brad talked a lot about the end of the season process, guys going on vacation, just guys meeting after their final game, and then guys going their separate way, and just how the entire organization and front office now goes into the offseason. Because, of course, as the Celtics season ends, the front office's season begins. I mean, that the front office, their bulk the bulk of their job, right? I mean, it's an all year type of thing, but right now the offseason is when it really ramps up for the front office, and of course in tangent with the ownership. But something also that came out in this entire press conference, something again not headline shattering, but just something to maybe note. I mean, not note like, oh, let's note this, but hey, the Celtics, they completed 2 draft workouts today. They've already been completing draft workouts, and Brad Stevens said on draft night he does not expect he does not expect the Celtics there to be any fireworks with the Celtics. The Celtics in this year's draft, in the 2025 NBA draft, the Celtics own picks 28 in the first round and 32 in the second round. So right next to each other, 4 or 5 picks away there, four or five picks aside from each other, 28 and 32. But according to Brad, he can't imagine fireworks on draft night, at least not with us. That's what he said. At least not with us. So at least not with the Celtics. I'll say this though. Teams have said that in the past. Oh, don't expect us to do anything. We're not doing much. And then you'll just see the most ridiculous move made in the world, like the most blockbuster, just crazy transaction after, again, front office members, executives, the GM, the president of basketball operations, maybe even the owner himself. They're all sitting there going, "Oh, everything's fine," hiding things in the background, hiding. But then something actually happens after all of their hiding. So I mean, right there, I think that's just that's one of those statements and quotes that, Brad Stevens, he's implying the Celtics won't do anything at the draft. But let's face it, if there's something on the table for the Celtics to do and it helps the championship odds in the future beyond next year, the Celtics are going to entertain it and do it. So although Brad Stevens can't imagine fireworks on draft night, at least not with us, at least not with the Celtics, I think that's one of those quotes where it's like, oh, there's nothing here at all, right? There's nothing here. It's like 28 and 32. It's like, okay, they might just pick 2 players and move on. That's it, right? But it's like, even though GMs and president of basketball operations say that, there's always a chance for something to happen. So just the fact Brad said that, it's like, okay, yeah, less than everybody's expectations, but at the same time, I'm going to bring it to light that things can go differently here at draft time. And again, 2 draft workouts completed for the Celtics today, and that just notifies people that draft workouts are actually already going on. They've been going on throughout, I mean, basically ever since the college season ended, so all the way back from there. And then he talked a lot about the Knicks Celtics series because this was the end of the season press conference. Said he talked on the playoff physicality, and he certainly was in agreement with the rest of the NBA community and a lot of players out there about the NBA playoffs, analysts as well. The NBA playoffs, they seemingly are more physical. There are less calls made in the NBA playoffs, and it seems like a different style of game in the NBA playoffs compared to the NBA regular season. Brad agreed with that 100%. However, he does not think the playoff physicality hurt the Celtics, but said the Celtics were simply just beat. They just didn't play well. And he was talking about the margins too, how thin the margins can be. He was talking about, like, we lost game 1 in overtime. We lost game 2 by 1 point. And those are the razor thin margins keeping us from potentially a championship and back-to-back titles this year, and still being on post game here at Celtics Talk Weekly. I mean, those are literally the thin margins. And he just said he doesn't think the physicality necessarily hurt the Celtics, but just the fact the Celtics were beat either by themselves or by their opponents fair and square. And so he talked about that physicality a little bit. Obviously, that's been a topic of our entire program as of late. Just, the physicality in the first round, did it help or hurt the Celtics? Brad Stevens said, doesn't really think it hurt the Celtics, but certainly thinks it's different from the regular season. But also added on to that the Celtics, I mean, it was more about how they played more than the physicality out on the floor. Although we will say, in terms of just team physicality, the Knicks gave out more physicality than the Celtics. But again, Brad Stevens added on to that. Every team is playing with the same standards out there. So the same whistles, same referees, same standards of how a game is played. If the Knicks want to take advantage of that, go ahead, take advantage of that. If the Celtics don't, go ahead. We'll see what results happen. And obviously, the Knicks came out with the series. But Brad Stevens highlighted that as well, as just how both teams in every single series they play under the same standards. Even though we're talking about the style of play come playoff time, they're playing under the same standards. So whichever team takes advantage of that, it's up to themselves. And obviously, in the Celtics Knicks series, the Knicks took more advantage of that physicality than the Celtics. That physicality, the allowance of physicality from the NBA officials. Um, More just getting on, just moving on to a couple more things here. Did mention Kristaps Porzingis. It didn't sound like Kristaps' illness, ailment, whatever was going on with Kristaps is a long-term thing whatsoever. Some of those questions were coming up after game 6 and after game 5 as well. Just Kristaps continuously putting on horrendous performances in this series against the Knicks. But he mentioned Kristaps, it was just kind of out of the blue, which I don't know how much I believe that, but Kristaps, the illness was out of the blue, and they were lingering effects from a
Same.
viral illness back in March.
I,
So, and
I
he also mentioned Kristaps will be playing in Eurobasket. We said that on the broadcast the other night, but also said it will be good for Kristaps Porzingis to play in Eurobasket to get his legs under him, and he said the illness should not be a problem come Eurobasket, which is
well,
I believe out in August, if I'm not mistaken, August September range.
I have to say that that kind of frustrates me in a sense. And we'll get into this again on Wednesday, but that frustrates me in a sense because I look at this and be like, if he's been battling with this illness all year long, then he should take the whole off season and really get a good recovery. Do what average players do and work in the gym and stuff. But like, come on. That's what frustrates me with Porzingis is because there's been a lot of time where he hasn't been able to play, and then he wants to go compete overseas for like I don't know. I don't know. That just frustrates me because he wasn't able to give the best effort here, so that should be his time to kind of recover. That's looking at it from a point of view that Porzingis is with us next year. I think he should have
But
time to recover.
that's the big question: is like by Eurobasket will Porzingis even be on the roster? I'll say that.
Yeah, and
But
it's like,
also,
I say really quick too, it's
yeah,
like that's a cause for injury too. I mean, you've seen so many players who have done extra stuff like this and injured themselves. I mean, one name is even Paul George. Like you see several players who do extra stuff and they get injured and then they don't play. I see it throughout every sport, and that's why they emphasize too for any like high school listeners and stuff, like when you're in season they're like only focus on this. They hate it when you do other sports and like when it's during a season because then you risk injury and then they lose you. So that's just my take, but Seamus, continue.
yeah, there's certainly multiple ways to look at the whole Kristaps Porzingis playing in Eurobasket story, because it's I mean at this point it seems to be Kristaps said he was playing in Eurobasket. Brad Stevens, it seems like it's going to happen as long as Kristaps doesn't have some kind of setback with anything this offseason, especially with that illness that we're looking at. I, I'm I'm in favor of guys going out and playing the international game in general. I just like to see guys participate in international tournaments. I like to see them playing basketball during the summer. But there's always a view of uh,
Should certain
durability
guys
with
play? Should certain
Kristaps Porzingis is always a question. So there is something out there where I totally understand your perspective, Griffin, where it's like, all right, if he's playing more minutes, he's putting more wear and tear on his body. And not only is he putting more wear and tear on his body, he's increasing his likelihood of getting injured in a scenario in which he's not playing for the Celtics, which would just be devastating for the team. I mean, imagine if he's gone during the offseason. We're banking on him to be the starting center next year with a lesser center rotation. Maybe Cornette and Horford, they walk somewhere, and we're still banking on Kristaps after not dealing him in the offseason. And then he gets hurt in Eurobasket. What happens to the Celtics under those circumstances? But I think just from a basketball enjoyer perspective and a fan perspective, I want to see these guys play in Eurobasket. I want to see him play in the FIBA World Cup. I want to see him play in the Olympics. And whatever injury concerns, sometimes I do think these guys just have to be consistent, right? Like sometimes injuries pop up because guys are not conditioned, right? It's like, oh, you spent too much time on the couch. You spent too much time lying down in your bed. You spent too much time not getting to the grind, getting in the gym and getting yourself healthy, like getting yourself like people go to the gym all the time. Like, why do they go to the gym? And we're talking about both lifting weights and basketball purposes, right? It's like they go because they want to be more healthy. They want to gain more muscle. They want to burn more fat. So why wouldn't
I
the
I
NBA work the same or basketball work the same? Like you want to be in rhythm, you want to be conditioned, you want to be in shape. Like if you're taking too much time off, there's a possibility that when you come back, it's like, oh, I have all this rest. But at what point does that rest become just pure laziness? At what point does that rest just become a complete disadvantage to like, oh, I've had too much rest. Obviously these players, they're not getting to this level. I mean, maybe some of them out there, but it's like, here's this fat, lazy slob on the couch. It's like, oh wait, he can't play basketball anymore. He has too much rest. Like it could, I could see it in that way. Obviously, not to that like not to that level with the NBA and basketball players, although we have seen players in the past, like sometimes can let themselves go in the off season every now and then and results don't necessarily play their way. So I do like I do see the perspective too of like I want to see guys out there and conditioning and staying in shape. Like that could be a theme of Porzingis this offseason is conditioning himself and staying in shape because last offseason he didn't have a full offseason to actually go through his normal offseason routine. He was rehabbing an injury last offseason, and this offseason it could be good for Kristaps Porzingis to go out there, get himself in shape, get his rhythm back under him, get his legs back under him, and then return next season in a more engaged, healthy manner to start the year so that he can have
and
a full good season and not be managing injuries here and there off the court all the time and oh we're resting him here resting it's like no like get in shape get in
Seamus,
shape. I'm tired of hearing the
I
rest factor. It's like you got to do things in order to get in shape, to get in rhythm, to get yourself going, to get your body going. It's like you got to do these things. It has to be a routine. Can't always be sitting down on the damn couch.
No, I agree because then he'd probably end up like a Zion. I'm not saying he would because you see the body type, but that's what happens with some guys in the off season. But I just think, after that illness, this should be an off season where he figures out what that is and trains, works on his game and stuff in a more respectful manner rather than going into Euro League basketball where that could be some of the most intense basketball you're going to play and risk himself for injury. That's just from my perspective. If he ends up even on the Celtics next year, who even knows? Yeah, but
That's also going to be a point in all of this is Eurobasket is going to be a lot more physical than the NBA. Like
yep.
any FIBA led competition, right? The FIBA World Cup, Eurobasket, Olympics, any FIBA led competition, it's going to be more physical. The rules are just a little bit different. Hand checking is more allowed. It's just there's going to be a lot of aspects of the game that I think I'm to the point on Kristaps where it's like maybe we go the other way. Maybe it's not the rest, right? Maybe that's not what we need here. We've been trying to rest him and things don't go. Maybe he just needs to be in shape, right? It's like
Yep.
at the end of the year, it's like we're blaming all this tiredness on an illness, and it's like maybe he's just not in shape. Like maybe he's like stamina, like he's not training to the greatest degree because he's always harboring these injuries and coming back and resting. And it's like, how about just getting rhythm and getting shape? How about that, Kristaps Porzingis? So
Yep.
Brad Stevens did say he believes it'll be good for Kristaps to play in Eurobasket. We obviously have some differing opinions on that, but did mention Kristaps. It was frustrating for him to go through that illness. It was more frustrating for him than anybody else out there, and we know how frustrating it was from a Celtics fan base perspective. I do want to talk about a couple more points here. Um, just touching on Jalen Brown because Jalen Brown, that's going to be something that we talk about a lot this offseason. Is him being the number one option next year. Jalen Brown, Brad Stevens said he has full faith in Jalen as the number one option of the Celtics. Put himself behind Jalen as well. Talked about putting himself behind Joe Mazzulla earlier. Well, Brad Stevens, he's doing the same thing with Jalen Brown. He's outright saying, Jalen Brown, I want him as my number one option. I feel, and he said too, he feels good about Brown or Tatum, if you have one of those guys, if you have two of those guys, you have a great chance. But even if you have one of those guys, he feels like a team has a pretty good chance. And Jalen, he said he put his full faith behind Jalen as the number one option next year. So that doesn't obviously reveal the team's hand in, oh, they're dealing or not dealing Jalen Brown this summer, but it does it does say something that Brad Stevens is comfortable outwardly saying that and coming out as saying Jalen Brown, we feel comfortable with him as the number one option. If there is a Jalen, we'll have to talk about it on another program. Somehow we didn't talk about it on the Jalen Brown torn meniscus special. It's like we totally missed this point, but there have been a lot of conversations about, oh, can the Celtics trade Jalen Brown? I think it's absolutely ludicrous, but I can't deny the NBA is a crazy place, and other teams you think, oh, they'll never do this, they'll never do this, and then all of a sudden 7 first round picks are being thrown around, and you have all these role players being thrown around. You're going, okay, wait, maybe this team would do this, okay. But so we will have to have the Jalen Brown
We'll
conversation, the
talk
trade
about
conversation
on
later,
Wednesday. We'll
right?
talk
And
about
but as for now, it seems like Brad Stevens is confident in Jalen going into next season and he didn't really entertain many questions at all about the offseason. We said that to begin. It was all deflection to end of the season. Don't ask me about the offseason. Don't ask me about any of this stuff. So Brad Stevens, from that standpoint, just didn't really. It wasn't down about answering questions that were asked about transactions, but also go further on Jalen here. Uh, I speculated on the Jalen Brown torn meniscus special the other day. I speculated the team and Jalen Brown knew about this injury. If he was experiencing discomfort in March, why wouldn't they test him in March? Why would they wait to the end of the season when he could have a serious injury? He's playing through a serious injury. They have no idea. And they at the end of the season they go, oh wait, now the rest of your career's altered because you've been playing through a serious injury and that you've known about for 2 months now. No, they did tests back in March. They understood he had a torn meniscus back in March. Brad Stevens, that's probably the other juicy the information that came out of this press conference is Brad, it's just the confirmation of this. Brad, the front office, the team ownership, and Jalen Brown all knew about the torn meniscus back in March and at the beginning of the playoffs. They all knew about it. I said they knew about it, speculated it, and Brad Stevens confirms, yep, that's true. Everybody knew about it because why wouldn't they conduct tests back in March? But said uh, the knee is structurally stable, structurally sound. So from that standpoint, the knee, it's not ligaments aren't loose or partially torn or his knee it's all structurally intact. His is not cartilage, everything that goes in. Again, we're not medical professionals here, so breaking out all the crazy names, the PCL, the MCL, the ACL, any other ligament in the knee that we're forgetting. I feel like those are like the meniscus,
yeah.
the quad tendon, all those, everything was structurally sound. It was just a torn meniscus. But Jalen wanted to play. We kind of had the debate of should he have played or not, and it came out that Jalen wanted to play, and that's the thing that I think we missed on yesterday is just talked about. Oh, how long of next season is he going to miss? Like we think he's going to be available for opening night, but there could be a scenario where the Celtics try to out opening night, give him part of the season off. But something we didn't mention in that conversation is just the competitiveness of Jalen Brown. It came out at the end of this season when Jalen specifically wanted to play through this torn meniscus. And I believe it will come out at the beginning of next season if the Celtics try to hold him out in any regard, even if he is healthy. The competitiveness will come out of Jalen Brown, and he's going to want to play next season, regardless of Tatum's status, the team status, the competitiveness of the Celtics. Jalen Brown is going to want to play because he has that competitive spirit, that competitive fire, that competitive heart in himself, and I don't see that going away. It's been there the entire time he's been with the Celtics through thick and thin, and certainly through a lot of these moments where he's become. I mean, he's made his life. I mean, he's an NBA champion with the Boston Celtics. He's making $70 million 3 seasons from now, awarded one of the biggest contracts in NBA history, the biggest contract in NBA history at the time, regardless of being a champion, regardless of being an NBA All Star, an All NBA player, regardless of receiving one of the biggest contracts in NBA history, receiving all of the lore, right? Getting every single thing that he set out to get at the beginning of his NBA career and even the beginning of his basketball career. He's received all of the accolades, all of the honors, right? Everything that comes with being a star within the game. Jalen Brown is still competitive at this point in time. That is just a natural. I think you have to have that in order to attain all of the great things in which Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum have attained over the course of their careers in terms of winning, the contracts, the money, everything, the stardom. You need that competitive fire. You need that competitive spirit. Jalen Brown has that. And I don't see it just going away next year because the Celtics aren't competitive. It's like, I'll sit down to it. It's like I already made my money, already. No, Jalen Brown is a different breed. I mean, he's gonna push the throttle forward, and he's gonna want to play next season. And that's something we did not mention last that during that torn meniscus special, but something I want to make evident here is Jalen Brown will want to play next season. And again, his knee was structurally stable, and Jalen wanted to play through this meniscus injury after it was revealed today Jaylen Brown, the Celtics, Brad Stevens, the front office, they all knew about this meniscus injury back in March and early April. So that was something else that came out in Brad Stevens' presser. Also, just another lasting note here: good accommodations for JT. We talked about the Marriott Bonvoy points. Like I don't know, I forgot which hotel he said, but hey, whatever happened with Jason Tatum after his Achilles tear, he talked about there was real benefit in doing the surgery early and right away, and the surgery was done pretty well right away. I mean, they had him off the court and. Again, like the accommodations he said at the hotel in New York, because Jason had to stay back because of the surgery, were just absolutely phenomenal. So it was great to hear there that the environment for Jason Tatum was comfortable through his Achilles surgery, in the process of going uh, into the procedure and out of the procedure. And again, Brad said there was real benefit to doing it early, so that obviously we've heard a lot of that. The recovery time,
Yeah,
is
Seamus, can
get
I
the recovery going right away. Plus, apparently, studying wise, if you let it go, that's when the muscle starts to lose its mass, lose its ability over time. So they wanted to reconnect his tendon, Jason Tatum's Achilles tendon, right away. So that's pretty well. That's my entire list of what Brad said at the press conference today. I mean, I there might be a couple more points I'm missing out there, but those were some of my key points. And again, it's not the most hard hitting, not the most hard hitting statements or notes in the world, but hey, this is an end of the season press conference, and Brad was doing his job and did give us a couple of tidbits out there, but nothing too serious to write a story about, but certainly something good enough to record about.
Yeah, no, you said it right there though, Seamus. I agree. I liked his quote there. You obviously saw him helping off Jason Tatum. And he said before we could even give an injury report, the surgery was done. So it was right there. But I think that's gonna do it for today. But join us on Wednesday as we will be breaking down the talks about the draft. We'll get into more talks about Porzingis, Brown. We're gonna keep the content going, but again, that's gonna do it for our show. Make sure to check out episode 40. Make sure to check out over on Celtics Talk Weekly all the series preview we did. Not preview. Well, there will be a series preview tonight for the Indiana Pacers and New York Knicks. So check that out and go check out again, the series recap over on Celtics Talk Weekly as well. But we will see you guys Wednesday for more Celtics content. So just make sure to like and subscribe. Again, click that post notifications icon right there to stay updated with all our upcoming posts. We will be posting so much this off season, so stay tuned. We will see you guys on the next one. Peace, guys.